The most dangerous day in a person's financial life is not the day he goes broke. It is the day a large pile of money lands in his lap before his mind has earned the right to command it. That is the day people smile too early, talk too loudly, forgive their own stupidity too quickly, and confuse a cash event with competence. I have watched this happen in families, in small towns, in businesses, and in markets. A man receives an inheritance and thinks he has become wise. A woman wins a large check and thinks her life has become easier. An athlete signs a contract and thinks the hard part is over. Most of the time, the money did not save them. It exposed them. You need to understand this before we go 1 inch further. Sudden money is not wealth. Sudden money is a flood. And if you do not build the right floodgate, the water will not irrigate your life. It will tear your house off the foundation. People imagine financial ruin as a slow process. They imagine a bad decade, a recession, a divorce, a string of poor returns that happens, but sudden money creates a faster and more humiliating form of ruin. Not because the amount is too small, because the person holding it is usually still operating with the reflexes of scarcity, the fantasies of deprivation, and the judgment of someone who has never had to protect scale. That combination is lethal. The first mistake people make is emotional. They think the money means they can breathe out. What it really means is they must become more disciplined than they have ever been in their lives. If you get rich all at once, the first enemy is not taxes. It is not your cousin. It is not the financial industry. It is the version of you that still believes relief must be spent to be real. That is the first leak. I want to put this in the bluntest language I know. If money arrived in your life today in a size you did not build through years of ownership, discipline, and repetition, then your character is not yet calibrated for it. Your habits are not calibrated for it. Your relationships are not calibrated for it. Your sense of identity is not calibrated for it. And if you do not admit that immediately, the flood has already started. Most people want the fantasy story. They want me to tell them a big check makes everything better. It pays the debt, upgrades the car, fixes the house, quiets the anxiety, impresses the people who ignored you, and finally allows you to live. That is not what sudden money does. Sudden money magnifies what was already unstable. If you were impulsive, it gives your impulse a larger weapon. If your marriage was brittle, it gives that brittleness a larger stage. If your family had poor boundaries, it turns poor boundaries into a feeding frenzy. If you did not know how to say no with $100, you will not suddenly know how to say no with $1 million. You will simply say yes at a more expensive scale. That is why I would begin in a place that sounds rude but saves lives. You do not celebrate first, you disappear first, you do not announce first, you go silent first. I call this the silence window. When the flood first hits, your only job is containment. Not distribution, not renovation, not generosity theater. Containment. You close your mouth. You narrow the number of people who know. You stop performing good fortune. You stop using the money to settle old emotional arguments in your head. You do not tell the people who doubted you. You do not show the people who rejected you. You do not start shopping to prove to yourself that the money is real. That instinct is the old self trying to convert money into status, because it still does not understand control. And control is the only reason wealth matters. People talk about privacy as if it were a luxury preference. It is not, it is armor. The moment other people know you have received money, the game changes. Your phone does not ring the same way. Every request carries a hidden invoice. Every great opportunity comes with someone else's hand already in your pocket. Every family conversation develops a second language. You are no longer just a person. You become a funding source. And once that happens, you are forced to spend energy protecting yourself from narratives that were not even alive the week before. I have seen good men destroyed not by greed, but by guilt. That is one of the least discussed financial poisons in the world. They inherited money they did not earn, so they feel they must morally launder it by rescuing everybody. They lend to the uncle with a plan. They back the friend with a restaurant idea. They fix the cousin's truck. They pay a nephew's rent. They buy peace inside the family for 6 months. Then the money starts to thin, and worse than that, respect thins with it. Because money given without structure teaches people to love access, not discipline. You do not become generous by becoming weak. You become generous by becoming structured. That requires time. So the second thing I would do, after silence, is brutally simple. I would pay off the debts that are actively eating my future. Not all obligations are the same. I am speaking about high interest poison credit cards, personal loans with ugly terms, emergency debt that compounds faster than your assets can realistically compound. You do not keep a flood in one room while termites chew the beams in the next. You stop the active destruction first. A sudden windfall should not make you look richer. It should make your fragility smaller. That is a different objective. Most people do the opposite. They think the first job of money is visual transformation. New car, new watches, new neighborhood, new furniture, new body language. That is theater. Debt removal is invisible, which is why it is so powerful. Nothing glamorous happens when a balance disappears. Nobody applauds when an interest meter stops. But one of the highest return investments in the world is deleting a guaranteed negative compounding rate from your life. You do not need genius for that. You need humility. That is rare. After that, I would do something that looks passive to people who are addicted to movement. I would let the money sit, not forever. Long enough for my nervous system to catch up. Sudden money creates identity shock. Yesterday you were one person, today on paper you are another. But your mind does not update at the speed of a wire transfer. Your appetites are old, your fears are old. Your social reflexes are old, your spending fantasies are old. That is why the first 6 months after a windfall are so dangerous. The money is new, the operator is not. If you hand a racing machine to someone with the emotional habits of a panicked driver, he does not become a champion, he becomes an accident. So I would leave the money in a safe place and make no major lifestyle decisions while my imagination burns through its first foolish season. That waiting period is not laziness. It is calibration. You are not waiting because nothing needs doing. You are waiting because the wrong self is still touching the controls. Now, let me say something many people do not want to hear. Do not quit your job immediately. Yes, I know the fantasy. You want to look your boss in the eye and reclaim your dignity. You want the satisfying movie ending. You want one dramatic sentence and a walk to the elevator. That is emotion talking. The job may not be forever, but the paycheck, the structure, the social rhythm, and the ordinary demands of a working life do something very important in the early phase after sudden wealth. They keep your ego from floating off the ground. Work is not only income, it is friction. And friction protects people from stupidity. The moment you remove all structure from a life that has suddenly acquired excess cash, spending expands to fill the psychological vacuum. People do not blow fortunes only because they are greedy. They blow fortunes because unstructured days create appetites. They wake up late, they browse, they fantasize, they deserve. They wander into upgraded habits one purchase at a time. A new lunch becomes a new standard. A new standard becomes a new circle. A new circle becomes new expectations. Then the income that once looked infinite starts financing a lifestyle machine that now requires continuous feeding. This is how people with 6-figure and 7-figure windfalls go broke while looking successful all the way down. I have a phrase for this: comfort ceiling. Every time your life rises to meet your new money, your freedom falls to meet your new overhead. You think you are improving your life. What you are often doing is building a bigger monthly hostage situation. This is why I would get comfortable but never perform rich. You can fix the leaking roof. You can stabilize your home base. You can replace a dangerous car with a reliable one. You can solve chronic financial pain, but you do not move into an ecosystem that requires the money to keep raining forever. One of the most expensive lies in modern life is that you should upgrade into the neighborhood. The habits and the cost structure of people who are still earning at the pace you are not. A house is not just a house. It is taxes, insurance, maintenance, expectations, comparison, social calibration. One expensive choice often recruits 10 more, and people who receive sudden money almost always underestimate the carrying cost of their new identity. The old version of you thought the expense was the purchase price. The wealthy version of you must think in maintenance burdens, tax drag, legal exposure, and psychological expectations. That shift is everything. Then comes education, not motivational education, not expensive vanity seminars, not the fake sophistication of learning to speak in ticker symbols and private market jargon. I mean basic financial literacy. You need to become the kind of person who can recognize predators before they sit down at your table. Because I promise you, once people smell money, the world sends salesmen. Some wear suits, some wear friendship, some wear family, some wear romance, some wear advice. And if you are not financially literate, you do not merely risk poor returns, you risk handing your decision, making to people who profit from your confusion. This is where many inheritors and winners fail. They think money buys intelligence by association, so they start moving capital before they understand cash flow, taxes, asset location, withdrawal rates, liquidity, legal structure, and behavioral risk. That is like being handed a rare machine and immediately letting strangers take pieces off it because they sound confident. I would spend aggressively on understanding, but cautiously on assets. I would learn how taxes actually work. I would learn what trust structures do. I would learn what a reasonable withdrawal rate looks like. I would learn the difference between preserving purchasing power and chasing performance. I would learn how to read fees. I would learn the shape of a sound balance sheet. I would learn how wealth is usually lost. That matters more than glamorous return projections in my life. I made a great deal of money, not because I loved complexity, but because I respected. Avoiding stupid has a higher expected return than admiring brilliance. If you get rich suddenly, your first responsibility is not maximizing gains. It is reducing the probability of a catastrophic mistake. That means staying out of your friend's business. Stay out of it. The restaurant idea, the apparel brand, the crypto mining operation, the sure thing real estate flip, the podcast network, the app, the family expansion plan, the small business that just needs a little capital. You are emotionally vulnerable in the early phase of a windfall. That makes you a terrible allocator of sympathy capital. When people ask for money, they are almost never only asking for money. They are asking you to validate their story. If you say no, you feel cruel. If you say yes and it fails, you feel robbed and ashamed. Either way, the relationship changes. I have watched more wealth evaporate through social leakage than through market volatility. People imagine being used by Wall Street. Most are used by their emotional need to be seen as generous, loyal, supportive, or unselfish. That is why structure matters. If you ever help, do it through rules, limits, and vehicles that protect both sides, never through random emotional openings. Now let us talk about the thing people rarely mention when they talk about money. Security attracts attack. The more wealth you have, the more you must assume the world will test your perimeter. I call this target physics. Sudden wealth increases legal risk, fraud risk, manipulation risk, romantic risk, family conflict risk, public exposure risk. It changes the incentive landscape around you. That does not mean you become paranoid. It means you become adult. You protect documents, you review insurance, you understand liability, you do not mix personal indulgence with asset ownership carelessly. You do not sign things because someone seems nice. You do not let the money turn your life into an unlocked house with the lights on. That brings me to one of the most misunderstood concepts in personal finance: liquidity. Too many people think being rich on paper is the same as being strong. It is not if all your money gets tied into illiquid ventures, large property positions, locked up vehicles, and badly structured deals. Then one emergency or one opportunity can expose the truth. You are asset heavy and power light. That is a weak position. I would rather see a person with real liquidity, moderate ambition, and a durable system than a person with a grand balance sheet and no maneuvering room. Because real wealth is not what you own, it is what you can survive, refuse, wait through, and act on. That requires liquid reserves. Not because cash is exciting, because cash is decision power. The world regularly offers bargains only to people who are not forced sellers and not desperate buyers. That is why I would create a simple system after the first containment stage. A safety core, a growth core, a life core, and a generosity core. The safety core is untouchable. Enough liquidity to live, absorb shocks, and never be extorted by urgency. The growth core is capital designed to compound with patience in simple, understandable vehicles. The life core is where you rationally improve your actual standard of living without turning your overhead into a monster. The generosity core is where you help intentionally, not impulsively. Without those separate compartments, sudden money behaves like spilled water. It finds every crack. People love to debate percentages as if precision creates wisdom. The real point is behavioral architecture. Your system must make bad decisions harder. If your money is one giant emotional blob, you will eventually spend, lend, overpromise, speculate, or panic with it. If your money is organized into purpose-built compartments, your future self has a fighting chance. This is also why I do not want you becoming a cowboy investor. The moment cash arrives, you are not proving anything by buying complex instruments. You are not becoming sophisticated because you discovered leverage. You are not demonstrating courage by concentrating the portfolio after one lucky run. Early success is one of the most dangerous intoxicants in money. It creates false genius. A man buys 5 speculative things in a good market, makes money, and decides he has insight. He did not have insight. He had wind at his back. A woman chooses 2 concentrated bets during a euphoric cycle, sees them rise, and starts speaking as if prudence is for timid people. That is not wisdom. That is how people talk right before the market collects tuition. Sudden money plus early luck is one of the fastest roads to permanent self-deception. That is why I want simplicity, breadth, humility, and patience at the beginning. No heroic gestures, no desperate doubling, no fantasy of becoming the smartest person in the room in 12 months. The money did not arrive to turn you into a gambler. It arrived to give you a chance to become free. There is a difference, and freedom brings me to an uncomfortable truth. You must protect your children from the money. Not only the money from your children from the money. If they are given direct access without maturity, responsibility, and structure, then what you call love becomes a delayed form of sabotage. Money without formation weakens effort. It distorts appetite. It confuses identity. It teaches the next generation to consume the tree instead of protecting the orchard. This is why serious people think in trusts, rules, timing, and stewardship. Not because they are cold, because they understand that wealth can become acid if it touches an unprepared mind. The goal is not to create dependency dressed up as generosity. The goal is to preserve optionality, discipline, and continuity. That requires design. The same is true in marriage. A sudden increase in money does not heal a weak relationship. It tests it. If there are unresolved cravings, ego needs, resentments, status wounds, or boundaries issues, sudden wealth gives each one more oxygen. Temptation gets more expensive. Mistakes get more public. The cost of betrayal multiplies. Half of everything is not a slogan when a fortune has arrived. It is arithmetic. So when people get rich suddenly and begin playing with romance, secrecy, or vanity, I do not see freedom. I see demolition charges being wired into the foundation at this point. Some people will say I make wealth sound exhausting. No, I make unmanaged wealth sound exhausting. Properly handled money makes life quieter, cleaner, and healthier. It lowers cortisol. That matters more than most people understand. A great deal of so-called personality improvement in this world is really just stress reduction. When people are not cornered, they think better, they sleep better, they speak better, they parent better, they negotiate better, they make fewer frantic, stupid decisions. Money cannot buy virtue, but it can buy distance from certain forms of panic, and panic is one of the most expensive conditions in the world. That is why one of the most important uses of sudden money is not status. It is biological peace, a low cortisol life. That is a luxury I would choose over most display goods every time. The public thinks wealth is yachts. For me, wealth begins much earlier. Wealth is waking up without the sensation that one badly timed bill can rearrange your week. Wealth is not needing to tolerate insult because you are cornered. Wealth is not taking stupid risk because you are already underwater. Wealth is not having to perform success because your safety depends on other people believing a costume. Wealth is time, distance, options, negotiating power, energy preserved for decisions that matter. The people who get rich suddenly and stay rich understand something that losers never do. The principle is sacred. You may live off the fruit. You do not chop down the tree for firewood because you are excited tonight. I call this the 5% valve. The exact number is less important than the principle. If your capital is thoughtfully positioned, then what you spend each year must remain subordinate to what the system can sustainably produce. That is how money becomes a tree rather than a pile of kindling. Most people do the reverse. They see a large number and mentally divide it by fantasies, trips, cars, homes, gifts, projects, freedom from work. That is not thinking like an owner. That is thinking like a looter in his own house. The reason lottery winners so often end up broke is not mysterious. They confuse event wealth with system wealth. An event gave them money, but no system was built underneath it, so the money behaves like a temporary weather pattern, not a climate. Then the event passes, and they are left with higher costs, weaker habits, louder dependence, and no engine. I do not want that for you. If a great deal of money ever comes into your life, I want you to behave like this event is not a permission slip. It is an examination. The world is asking one question: can this person convert luck into structure? That is all, not glamour into applause, not envy into revenge, not pain into spending, luck into structure. So here is the path as I would walk it. Go silent, delete poison debt, do not perform rich, do not quit your job out of ego. Freeze major lifestyle changes while your identity catches up. Study money before you move money. Respect good advisors, but do not outsource your brain. Keep liquidity. Refuse social leakage. Do not fund everybody's dream because you are embarrassed by your own good fortune. Protect your children from direct access and your relationships from money. Fuel stupidity. Improve your health, because money without time is a mocking joke. Build a sustainable spending valve. And above all, learn to play defense so well that the money gets the chance to become a permanent system instead of a temporary event. You may think that sounds cautious. Good caution is often the first visible sign that a person is transitioning from consumer to allocator, and allocator is what you must become, not spender, not rescuer, not showman. Allocator, if you can do that, then sudden money becomes something extraordinary. Not because it turns you into somebody else, because it gives you a rare chance to become more fully the disciplined person you should have been all along. If you cannot do that, then the flood wins. And the tragic part is that many people drown while standing on the very money they once begged life to send them. There is one final test. After the debt is handled, after the silence, after the waiting, after the system, after the perimeter, after the first wave of requests, after the fantasies cool down, ask yourself one question. Do I want this money to impress people, or do I want it to outlive my impulses? That question is the door. One path buys applause. The other buys permanence. One path makes a rich-looking version of the same fragile life. The other path builds a floodgate strong enough to turn a random wave of luck into lasting power. Most people stand at that door and still choose speed. I would choose structure. I would choose quiet. I would choose durability. I would choose the kind of life where money no longer tells me what I must tolerate, who I must impress, or how loudly I must prove I matter. That is the right use of sudden wealth, not excitement, not spectacle command. And if you cannot choose command, the money was never really yours in the first place. It was only passing through.